and I've got some advice for you, little buddy. Before you point your finger, you should know that I'm the man. And if you're the man, he's the man, and you're the man as well. So you can point that fucking finger up your. This week we're covering Tool's Ænima. Is it Ænima? It's Ænima,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Anima?
We're gonna go with
Yeah.
Ænima.
Welcome to the Essential Albums Podcast, where three guys from 85 have a conversation about some of the biggest albums ever and forgotten favorites from yesteryear. We'll dive into an album's place in culture, discuss its merits, and decide if a record holds up and is worth your time. Of course, we get into a lot more than that, so join longtime friends Ryan, Denise, and Gordon as we dive into our favorite albums and relive some of the classics. All right, so yeah, Ænima this week by Tool. I'll just give a disclaimer, just right out front. Before this week, I didn't really know much about Tool. I never really listened to him that much. So if I start talking like out of line or my information's kind of out of nowhere, feel free to correct me, stop me, let me know. You guys have way more experience with this band than I do.
Yeah, we'll keep you in line. Don't worry.
Yeah, keep me in check. So I'm really interested to hear your answers to like our questions that we usually have for this band, since I mean a lot of mine will kind of be very easy one-word answers a lot of the time.
Like Gordon, where did you like before this album or before like doing this album?
Mm-hmm.
What was your experience of Tool like? Was there any songs that you liked or that you latched on to?
So I kind of missed out on like, it felt like in high school there was like a moment where like everybody was really into Tool. It was probably was it Lateralis when that came out?
Yeah.
But like it seemed like everyone was really into Tool. And I never really, like, I saw some of the singles, I downloaded some of the songs. So like I knew like Sober and like some tracks from the first album. And I didn't know which album they were from. It was just random tracks that I downloaded. I think I mixed it together on like a System of a Down CD that I burned for myself. So I was really just kind of out to lunch with this band. A buddy in high school once told me, they're like, oh man, you got to get into this band. Like they isolated for months when they wrote their like one album, like they lived in darkness and did all these like crazy things to like, and they just seemed like this crazy band. And I just totally missed the train on that. Okay. I don't know. How did you guys get into Tool, or what was your experience with Tool?
I suspect that both of us, I mean, all of us didn't really come at this from metal. Like I don't really listen to a lot of metal. Gordon, I don't think you do.
Not really, no.
And that's not probably where we came from. So I don't know, Anise, what latched you onto Tool?
For me, Tool, it was funny because at first it was just a name. Like it was just a name, Tool. I remember when my brother, again, who's a few years older, when he was in high school, and he was like telling me about people he was meeting, and he's like people are wearing Tool shirts and Korn shirts, and at the time I was like didn't really know who those bands were, and this was, I guess, around the time this album was coming out. But again, like 94, 95 is when I started like watching a lot of Much Music. So it was that, just seeing their song on Much Music. So after I knew the name and I heard the song, I'm like, well, this Stinkfist song is pretty cool.
Stinkfist. It was Stinkfist.
Yeah. But there was the music video, like they rarely played it, but they played it at night. And my TV was just Much Music all day, Much Music or TSN, but Much Music all day. And so like seeing that music video, I'm like, whoa, this video is weird. The song is like cool. And it wasn't really like, I guess it's metal, but at the time I feel like I was prepared for something that heavy from getting into rock with like the Nirvana and all that stuff. And, you know, even some of the bands like Silverchair's second album was getting heavier. And at the time it seemed like I was primed for that kind of more aggressive music, like Rage Against the Machine as well. But how about you, Ryan? Same? Was it this album as well, or?
No, you know what it was? It was some burn CD of yours again. I don't think it was a Bang. It was like there's a whole bunch of collection of Tool on this burn CD, and I was listening to it in class, and like at first I remember like not getting it, not really being into it. I'm like, okay, what's going on? These songs are so long. Like, what am I waiting for? Where's the sing-songy parts? Everything's so weird. I can't predict anything, right? But it was Sober that got me. I was like, okay, because Sober's like more of a pop song as far as Tool goes.
Yeah.
It's like, verse, chorus, verse, chorus. There's a great sing along chorus to it. So once I got that, it's like the language of Tool, the elements, sort of, I started to really become attached to. And that was a bridge to, the greatness of the big epics.
Yeah. Yeah. See, for me, like hearing Stinkfist, it was probably a little bit after the album actually came out. I'm not sure when I heard it. I don't remember, but I do remember my cousin bought the CD, so I would just kind of hear it at his house. So he would kind of introduce me to songs like one at a time. At first, you're a kid, so it's like, check out this song's called Hooker with a Penis. Like, listen to this song. And I
Yeah,
remember. And then he showed me like
that's true.
Ænima, and I love like the title track was great. And then it was just sort of one song at a time. And then once I got the CD, at some point, probably, if I had to guess, probably like 98, 99, like 98 is probably when I got the CD for myself. And I just remember being like, whoa, this is like really cool. And just even some of the longer songs, like I was writing, like listening to this album, just taking notes. I'm like a song like Eulogy with the bigger intro. I'm like, this song taught me patience in music, like just to wait for it.
Yes.
Because I
Yeah.
remember a lot of times, you listen to the first 20 seconds and maybe you might skip just to kind of get a feel for the album when you're young, especially with CDs. It's just so easy to do. And I remember like just being like, oh, wait, no, if you wait like the song, there's more to it than just the first 30 seconds.
Yep.
So it's like I was discovering these songs almost slowly over time. But yeah, it was
Yeah,
just like,
that's totally true. Like you listen to it differently. It's
mhm,
almost more like classical music because it's not so predictable. So in
yeah,
order to know what's going to happen next, in order to like know what to look forward to, be like, "Oh, I can't wait for this part." You have to listen to it a few times. And those first few times, you're like, "This is probably why Gordon didn't listen to it." He's like, "I don't know what the fuck's going on here." You got to actually like force yourself to let it sink in, and then once you put, once you have some patience, you get to experience the tension and then the release. You
yeah,
understand why it's worth it. But
mhm,
yeah,
Yeah, I did take a chance. Like I remember in college, so it's sort of been probably like '04, '05. I like was starting to get more into like progressive rock and stuff like that, like
oh yeah,
Mogwai and things like that. So I took a chance and I did go out and buy Lateralis, and I think I listened to it like maybe twice, and then it just kind of sat on my shelf. So I don't
yeah,
now after doing this week though, I do have a different appreciation for Tool after doing like some of the research. I feel like I probably did a little bit of like that high school deep dive that like a lot of people did. Kind of, I did it this week instead of 20 years ago
yeah.
or
It's,
25 years ago.
they're definitely a band that when you listen, because yeah, like I was introduced with Anima, then I went back and got Undertow, and then they came back with Later Alice. So that was sort of my, and I heard Opiate during that time as well. I don't know if I bought it or downloaded it. I can't remember, but they're one of those bands where you listen album to album, you can see that progression and how they've slowly morphed into what they become on the next album.
yeah,
So jumping in, especially on an album like Later Alice, I can see how it could be more alienating because you don't have the background of Undertow or Anima. I
yeah.
feel like after the first two, jumping in a little later, you kind of have to be more open to proggy music or heavier music, or just kind of have a different understanding than just jumping in with like a Later Alice. I can see how it can be daunting, or just these songs are long and like I don't really understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, like for me it was like I'm like I don't know any of these other songs. Like I knew Sober and Prison Sex before I bought that album, and then I'm like I know Schism from like that was a really big song at the time, or 3 or 4 years earlier. So that was like I'm like based off the strength of that song, I'll give it a shot. But yeah, you're right. I think I probably should have got into like maybe Undertow or Anima would have probably been a better way to start out.
But at the time, that's just the way it was. It wasn't as easy to jump back and just listen to the other albums. Like even for me, like I got Anima first, and then I went back and got Undertow, and then went back and got Opiate, just because there was such a break in time before Later Alice came out. I was sort of filling in the blanks during that waiting period, which is what I think a lot of people did. Were playing catch up on them. So that
Yeah.
I think when Later Alice finally came out, it was such a huge deal and a lot of anticipation and all that.
I think now that I'm thinking about it, I think it was Lateralis that I first was listening to Tool and be like, I don't understand this. Like, I don't know what this is. Like, this is like, yeah. And then it took Sober, and then but I remember discovering this album, Ænima, and be like, oh my god, because this is a little bit leaning more towards the song side of Tool, like songwriting. They have a lot of songs, and they're not, they have epic moments and stuff, but they have parts that you could that resemble a song. It's not just like, 10 minutes of like a very very slow build like they seem to be going on. Well, I don't know, maybe since 10,000 days they kind of pushed further and further in that direction. It's like the ends of the songs on this album. It's like they're just extending those, making those huge.
No, I do think there are songs on this album on Ænima that kind of show you the direction they were going. Like a song like Push It. Like a song like Push It is literally almost like a prequel to Schism and just everything lyrically, musically.
The guitar, yeah.
Does, yeah. And I remember just diving back in this week when I first got to that song again. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember when Later Alice came out. They're like, oh, they're going in this Push It direction, which was more of the epics and the longer stuff. And I don't know, which was fine with me on Later Alice. Like maybe the later albums did maybe lose me a little bit more, but I still appreciate them and I do have songs I like from them. But yeah, for me it was definitely the middle era, I guess now, or the Ænima Later Alice, where I was really like huge into them.
For sure, yeah.
So I guess that's a good segue into, I guess, what's your current relationship to Tool? Like, have you guys kept up with them? Like, I know they had a release that came out, I guess, 2 years ago. The 10,000, was it 10,000? No, sorry, that was Fear Inoculum.
Yeah.
Did you guys keep up with all that?
I did.
You go first, yeah.
Well, I did, because that was like I regularly listened to Tool, but they were becoming. It's gonna sound bad, but since jumping to Spotify, it became a nuisance to listen to them because they weren't on it. You had to jump onto YouTube, and it's not even them uploading it. It's just some random upload from whenever. So it became hard to listen to them because it's not. I wasn't really throwing on CDs. So when they did drop older stuff on the streaming right before the release of Fear Inoculum, it seemed like they created hype that way. So I was excited. I was like, finally, this stuff's on freaking streaming. And so I revisited a lot, especially in the last 2 years, because it became easier. And Tool is a band that I do love, and they are a band where I will just jump in and listen to tracks here and there, not necessarily the whole album all the time. But when Fear Inoculum came out, they're leaning more into like the longer epics and stuff, which is fine, and I appreciate it. I listened to the album and I'm like, yeah, this is good, but for me, it's more of like the punch of a Stinkfist or even a Schism or a Parabola, an Ænima, or Hooker with a Penis. I'm more in Prison Sex, Sober. I'm more of that kind of is more my speed, as opposed to like I like Numa, but it's like a 13-minute song. I'm not gonna just throw it on all the time. But I still appreciate them. I still follow them. If they were to come live, I would go see them. But
yeah, well,
yeah. How about you, Ryan?
Well, I was just gonna say that's the great thing about this album, because it's got more of a balance. Like, this is like the time. This is like the last album that is like an album full of songs, and then it's like almost like the concept of Tool just took over Tool, and they became almost. I don't want to say too serious, because I like the artsy side of it and stuff, but like the intermission on this thing, it's almost like it's almost like they're saying, don't take this stuff too serious, man. We're like, and then it leads perfectly into, I think, is it Jimmy, or I think so. Yeah. And it's like the same notes. It's the same notes. So you're like, oh, this music is whatever. Don't take this shit seriously. Whatever. It's like, you think it's so hardcore because it's guitars. Well, whatever. You could do it on a little organ thing. So I don't know. I feel like they moved away from that and started to take themselves, I don't want to say too seriously, but too seriously for Gordon. maybe me.
The thing is, like, the guys, like when you see them in interviews and stuff, and just how they carry themselves, and they're not that serious. It's just the way their music is, I guess, now, and the stuff I don't know. I know people love them, like, and they have a huge cult following. And I don't know, I consider myself part of that cult to a certain extent because I still
For
will
sure.
defend them and I still respect the new stuff and like the new stuff, but I don't love it. I'll say
Yeah.
that much.
So,
So
Well,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
hold on. I just want to make the last album, 10,000 Days.
Fear Inoculum.
No, the one before that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I stopped listening to them after that album, just to finish the question. But that album, the Vicarious and it was the Pot, I think is the other single. Like those songs are so good. Those are like
Yeah.
up
They're
with
amazing.
their best songs. So
Yeah.
they can pull it out. They can like make these amazing song art metal rock like the
Well,
whole that balance. But
well,
anyway,
I understand, like, on an artistic standpoint, why they would want to make a Fear Inoculum and like something along those lines, because it seems like they do like leaning into that stuff and trying new things and doing different stuff, which you kind of first see the steps towards that on Anima, I think,
yeah,
where you're seeing more of the experimentation where they're trying different things on different tracks. So, and they still like doing that. So, an album like Fear Inoculum kind of is more open to kind of what they want to do. It's just I matter what they do next. Are they going to keep doing the same thing? Are they going to make? Are they even going to do anything else? Are they going to, make another rock out album or something in between or another? It's kind of open at this point. So I'm not like
actually, I would say it's not open. Like it's almost like they pushed themselves up against the wall. Like they can't go any further in this direction, can they?
well, I think they're at the age too where they're more or less becoming a legacy act. They have so much music behind their under their belt. At this point, people just want to see them get together and make Tool songs.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
you need to get that. I don't know if you guys heard that news this week, but the algorithm recreating artist songs.
Oh,
No. What's that?
They did a Nirvana song, Amy Winehouse song, and Jimi Hendrix.
How does it sound? Is it close?
Yes, it's close.
Okay.
So that like, hold on. It's a robot, like a program recreating new songs by these artists.
Yeah, I guess it's like an AI program where they dumped in like a bunch of, Nirvana songs and it
Like deep fake.
spits out. Yeah, it's like a deep fake sort of deal, but it spits out like a Nirvana style song. The Nirvana one didn't sound that great. The Amy Winehouse one wasn't bad. The Jimi Hendrix one just sounded like a blues rock, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Not that I want that from Tool, but I'm saying like
We should drop Tool in that.
no, but what I'm saying is like I do want them to still push forward, but it just not like I don't know. It seems like they're kind of not really. They're pushing just in one direction where I want them to push into multiple.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
So I just wanted to ask you guys a general question before we get into like more song questions. What got you guys like hooked like in high school? Like, was it like the music? Like, because like for me as a casual listener, I'm probably losing a lot of the value that like a Tool fan would get because it seems like they're very cryptic. There's layers to everything. Every second or every minute of the song, there's a change that's like a crazy time signature or something like that. Like what keeps you guys interested or what got you interested? Like did that impact like the music or the bands that you would go on to join?
I think it was the whole packaging and everything with them and, kind of being at that age. Because when I was listening to this, I was, what, 13, 14, 15, those ages where I was kind of really getting into Tool. And it's, the album art had like the cool Lentikiller cover that kind of changed and it was like this trippy imagery. And then they had like the inside under the CD, it had another one with California getting flooded over. So it was like, whoa. And it kind of like played into the music and you start reading the lyrics and you're like, whoa, this isn't like the other stuff where, all the bands before that I was listening to is all about songs about, falling in love or just
My Name Is Jonas.
more personal, more introspective stuff where this was more like ideological, sort of very social and bigger, wider approach and talking about bigger concepts. So it was kind of opening myself to that. And then you kind of go back and hear their early stuff. You hear a song like Hush, which is like all about censorship and free speech and stuff. And you're like, whoa, this band has like different messaging from a lot of the other bands. So I put them in a category with like a Rage Against the Machine when it comes to that side of things. for what it did to me mentally at a young age, where I'm kind of more exposed to these things that are still around and are still being talked about. A lot of the exact same issues that Rage and Tool were singing about is still sort of relevant today.
Did they open your third eye into anything?
They opened my third eye.
Pried it open. How about you, Ryan?
Well, that's an interesting question. Like I was learning drums at the time when I was getting into Tool, so Tool was like respected amongst musicians as like this is really complicated stuff, even though all the kids are listening to it. I remember even like when I was in jazz school, in jazz history, the guy was like, yeah, and Tool's cool too. They do some interesting stuff. So there's that element. Like I would pick things apart from Tool, and it really advanced my drumming. Like Schism, that drum beat, Sober, it's a classic. 46 and 2, Eulogy, like all these things I would work out. So I was picking apart, like trying to understand music while I was listening to Tool. So there's that other whole puzzle going on while I was listening to Tool, getting into it. So that, I mean, in a way, it is music for musicians, in a way, but not entirely, because I know there's a huge cult following, and they don't all play guitar. Maybe 75%. I don't know.
That was the thing for me when I was getting into playing guitar, where their stuff is like complex and hard and complicated and stuff, but their guitar parts were, if you actually sat down and took the time, they weren't that hard to play.
Yes.
It was just, they weren't that hard to play. It was just sort of hard to learn. If that makes sense. Sort of like the order, the feel, the timing, because they would jump through time signatures and stuff. I remember getting the Guitar World magazine when Schism came out, and they had the tabs for the song in there. And I think I still have the magazine somewhere in the basement or something, but the magazine was all beat up because I'm like, I'm going to learn this song. And just by going through and learning that song, I became a better guitar player, even though I didn't really learn any new techniques necessarily, but just learning to play that song made me a better player.
For sure, yeah. So many drummers probably learned off Tool. I'm sure of it. And it's weird because it's the drums that bring maybe the most like distinctly metal sound to it, with the double kick and the crazy drum fills, which is weird. Yeah, because I don't listen to any other metal. But man, I think it's because of Maynard's voice that there's another bridge to pop music. So it kind of like, that's that anchor there. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's them too. Like when you listen through the albums, you can hear that they get better at their instruments and better at their kind of craft as the albums go on. Like from Undertow to Ænima, later Alice, 10,000 Days. Like holy cow! Like especially like in the drumming, you're like, well, the skill and ability that goes into the stuff is getting more complex.
Yeah, and like Gordon, I don't know if you did notice. Like we're talking kind of the layers of depth here. Like, did any of the lyrics stand out to you? Because a lot of the lyrics are quite clever, and just the way they reveal the meaning and the timing taught me a lot about lyric writing as well. Like taught me a lot about songwriting, this band, because somehow they're able to write these amazing songs yet break all your conventional rock rules at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't dive too much in the lyrics. I did listen to the album. Well, this week was the first time I listened to it from beginning to end. So I did listen to it, I think 3 times altogether this week. But you notice like the lyrics that you sang, those stick out, that you did the intro with, and you hear like the weirdness, or like there's like random German in it. You hear the Bill Hicks at the end. You hear like the swearing or like the weird things that he's saying. But like I never really picked up on the themes. And of course, yeah, if you read into it a lot more, it's like tied into philosophy and a whole bunch of other things. So I mean, I just didn't go down that rabbit hole. But I did notice like he does seem to be like really eclectic with like his lyric choice and his I guess his vocal range.
Yeah, and when we're younger listening to this stuff, you're kind of forming your value set and all this stuff. So listening to Tool and picking apart the lyrics, you get into learning some philosophy, or you get to learn one of your favorite artists' perspective on something that you heard in class or something like that. So yeah, Tool really is a mind opener for the youth, or was in our generation.
And for them too, since they were so mysterious, whenever Maynard, since you didn't know much about the band and Maynard, it was like the lyrics was the only real insight you got into the band.
Yeah.
And then their videos and then their artwork, which is all sort of psychedelic and trippy, and I don't know. It's funny looking now. Like I was trying to watch some live videos this week, and it's just funny seeing him on stage because it's like this huge stage show and videos. Just a guy in shorts and a t-shirt, just like playing guitar.
I mean, yeah, Maynard's like a pretty interesting guy. I mean, we could talk about him a little bit, but yeah, I didn't know much about him. I just thought he was just like some crazy hardcore rocker guy. But then I watched like a bunch of Joe Rogan interviews with him this week, and I saw some other things like the acting, the comedy that he kind of brings to everything, and I'm like, wow, I totally like misunderstood like what this guy really is. Like, I mean, yeah, he's all of that stuff, and I'm sure he was crazier like in the 90s and the 2000s, but like now he just seems like some chill guy that's like mellowed out, but he's definitely a rock star.
No, he was always like that. I mean, if you were into a Perfect Circle, I don't know if you got into them at all, like back
A little
in the
bit,
day.
yeah.
Yeah, just
not
like
in their peak.
immediately the guy's like wearing this wig to be like that's just a joke. It's just funny.
Right.
So,
I always thought he had like this long hair. It's probably because of a Perfect Circle. And then I remember also seeing like that weird mohawk mullet thing he had, but
oh yeah.
I guess now he doesn't even have hair.
He had like the rat tail thing going in the 90s.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember seeing them at Perfect Circle live, and like he's just putting his hands down his pants, like jerking off, I guess.
Okay, I don't remember that. Okay, so what I remember seeing them like on Lateralis, and like I remember like he was like facing the screen and
Yeah.
away from the audience and stuff. That's what I don't remember like casual shorts and stuff.
Well, that was for Perfect Circle. Right, for Tool, he doesn't really.
Oh, I see.
I think both times I saw them for Tool, he doesn't even really face the audience.
Yeah.
Fairly.
That's what I've read, yeah, because I it's good that you guys bring this up. I wanted to ask if you guys have seen them live, because it seems like their stage show is really unconventional. Like it's not like they tend to have a lot of darkness on stage. There's no real spotlights on them. It's more on like their projection and on the audience and stuff like that.
Yeah. So it's pretty much Maynard and Danny Carey on like platform risers, and then Adam Jones and Justin Chancellor on underneath, but there's like no lighting on them. They're just sort of playing, and then they have their screens.
Yeah, the show is more about like being there with all these people who also know these crazy ass songs. Like everybody's like screaming along the parts, like that extra umph you get from the waiting for such a long build. Imagine you're there with thousands of people and they're all waiting together. It's like classical music.
But the first time we saw them was Edgefest.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
That was a little bit different, but yeah, just leading up. I remember they just showed like a graphic on the screen. You're just waiting, and you're like, oh, they're gonna come on soon, but nope. It's like another like. It's not like a 5-minute video. It's like a 20-minute video.
Yeah, it was
so like, are they gonna start?
That's funny. So I was thinking out in my head like all week. I'm like, would these guys for me be like seeing them live? Would that be the ideal situation? Like after hearing the albums, because it seems like the albums are kind of like an experience. Like you guys are talking about like specific songs and that's what you guys like, but it seems like in order to listen to a Tool album, it's not really like you don't approach it with the conventional song listening style. It's more like it's like a whole big thing that you're going to absorb.
Well, yeah, for me, it's very like active listening. So you just sort of like, for me, the perfect way to listen to them is kind of on headphones or on a good sound system where the sound is very clear. Maybe smoke a little marijuana ahead of time and kind of feel the music and just sort of kind of enjoy it. But yeah, the live shows are good too. But I don't say that's you need to. Well, seeing them live is great, but it's not like you need to see them live to appreciate it type of thing. You should.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and they. For the most part, like they're from my experience, I don't know what they're doing now, but the music was mostly replicated from the albums. They're like, it's not like they're improvising and changing stuff up too much. Maybe they do a little bit. I don't remember very much of that at all. It's more about everybody knows these songs, everybody knows every note. So we're all along that ride together, listening to it. The lights aren't even on them, so it's not about watching them do the stuff really.
Yeah,
It's about listening. So
it's your
it don't
experience.
yeah, don't go to the show if you don't like the songs already. Like if you're not going there to get to know Tool, I think you got to find a few songs that really speak to you, those bridging songs, until you can get to know the style. Because not listening to metal, all those things are just gonna like kind of sour it. It's like, what the hell? What's with all this palm muting? What's with all this double kick drum blast beats? It's
Yeah.
like you don't hear that in any other music. It just sounds like I don't know. And the other music you do hear it in is often kind of cheesy. So anyway, I'm gonna leave it there on metal.
Yeah, especially when we listen to Undertow. And there's a couple albums like this, at least for me, because I don't come from the background of metal. So like an album like Undertow, or even what's like the Pretty Hate Machine by Nine Inch Nails and stuff. It's kind of like right on the border for me, where it's like it could have been cheesy if it was done a little bit differently, but they do it so good that it's kind of elevates it in
Yeah.
my eyes, at least to my ears. Where it's kind of
Yes.
a genre I'm not the biggest into, but these are standouts for me, at least like for prog metal,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever you
Interesting.
want to call it.
At the same time, I think I was started to get into System of a Down, and it's interesting how they do it. They just go full cheese. They're just like embrace the cheese. They're just let it happen. They're not gonna pretend. But Tool gives it like this weird. They're kind of jokey on this album a few
Yeah,
times,
yeah.
but there's also this dark undertone always in it. Yeah.
Well, but in the song, like in the title track, they say the best, where like don't like read between the lines, like don't just take everything I say seriously.
Yes. Yeah.
So I guess, yeah, with that, we could probably dive into the album a little bit and ask some general song questions. So I did see, I think there's 4 official singles from this album. Those singles were Stinkfist, H, Ænima, and 46 and 2. So I guess this is a really kind of like I'm not sure how to approach Tool, because I see them there. They go number 1 on Billboard. They're platinum. Or multi-platinum with most of their albums. And at the same time, I'm like, are any of these songs overplayed? Like, do they fit like our questions of like, what's the biggest song? What's the song you skip? Like,
Well, I think for big, you can kind of talk about that, because there are a lot of big songs from this album that they still.
maybe I'm just the one that's kind of blind to like the reach of Tool.
Well, the way I would look at it is like, what songs would get the biggest pop from like a concert, right? So
That's a good way of looking at
It's
it.
among their fans. Like, what are the biggest? That's how I get a sense of what are the favorite songs. Is like talking to people at the concerts. Like, oh, I love. Oh, it's this song. Like,
yeah,
46 and 2. That was the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Everybody loves that song. Every Tool fan.
Yeah, it seems like 46 and 2 and Stinkfist are like the 2 big ones from this album that they still play live. I'm not at least, well, I guess I haven't seen them since 10,000 Days. I don't even know if they came here for Fear Inoculum, but yeah, those are the only 2 songs they played from Ænima when I saw them, and they are the 2 most streamed from this album. They're kind of very close in streams, but yeah, those are probably the 2 biggest from this. 46 seems to get the radio love, but 46 and 2 seems to get the radio love, where Stinkfist had the video, so I have that sort of attachment to it.
But didn't they have to call it track 1 or something instead of Stinkfist?
Well, yeah, that was MTV made that rule.
Yeah,
Don't want to reveal what it's really.
or
It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor.
Yeah.
Read between the lines.
Or would just say Tool with no like song title.
What
And I'm
song
like,
is that?
I'm like Stinkfist. I'm like, is that what I think it means? And then, I mean, I'm sure that's what it means, right? Like, I mean, you can get deeper. I came across this like FAQ that is online about. It hasn't been updated since 2001, but it's like a fan FAQ site for Tool, and like it breaks down like all the songs, like fan theories and stuff like that. And yeah, like Stinkfist is like, it's got some crazy underlying meaning to it, but it seems like the most ridiculous song at the same time.
Well, it's like it uses fisting as a metaphor,
Right.
for like being desensitized essentially, and so each course you get deeper in with each course, so it's like so graphic until I think you're elbow deep or shoulder deep at the end. I don't remember.
But that's just sort of like Maynard's style of like humor. Like
Yeah.
he's not saying it to be like I'm into this or whatever. It's just more of like just a joke.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a joke, but also there's like it's a deep metaphor. So it's
Yeah,
like you get both of those. Yeah.
yeah, because he like Maynard did try his hand at stand-up comedy. I know at one point. So
Oh, did he?
Nice. Nice.
For some reason, I just picture like the Joker, like Joaquin Phoenix. But no, that's. I mean, he seems like a funny guy. He seems like a really funny guy because I enjoyed the. He seems like a funny guy though because I listened to the 99 Joe Rogan podcast, and that was when he like hit a button on his phone and all their catalog was digital or streaming at that point. And then I'm like, okay, this guy's pretty cool. I'll listen to the newer one. So he was on in 2020, and I mean, him and Rogan are just kind of like joking back and forth. Like I get along, or I get their sense of humor.
yeah.
Yeah.
And he came the last time he came on. He talked about how he was probably the one who brought COVID to New Zealand. Because he had it, and didn't know. Because he said they weren't at the time. They didn't know all the symptoms, so he didn't even test them.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. He was saying that it hit him pretty bad, like especially hard.
Yeah, he said it still affects him in his bones and joints.
Jesus
Goddamn.
Christ. And
Yeah,
that's
he
why
said-
we're on Zoom, folks.
Yep.
Yeah, I need my bones and joints to work. But yeah, and I saw there's like I think like a 30-minute or 25-minute YouTube video. It's like a compilation of like all their funniest moments. And like there's one where like an MTV interviewer is just like asking him like about a quote that he said in like 2001. And she's like, how do you still stand by that or something like that? And he's just like, look, I did a lot of LSD in high school and I don't remember everything I say. So we can just move on. It's like something to like that effect. And like, that's just cool.
That's a good answer.
That's just his way of like dismissing the question, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, they seem like funny guys, and even when you look at his like a solo side project, Pussifer, it's all sort of that kind of kitschy humor, comedy, tongue-in-cheek stuff. And even when Danny Carey had his side project, Pygmy Love Circus.
Oh yeah.
I remember seeing them live opening for A Perfect Circle, and
that was in
wearing
London.
weirdo yeah, in London.
Yeah.
They're wearing these like weirdo masks and running through the crowd. It was kind of creepy actually, but yeah, they seem like pretty lighthearted guys for how serious their music is.
Yeah, I mean, I guess kind of going back to like what you were saying earlier, Ryan, about Stinkfist, like they do a really good job of balancing like this crude sexual humor with like these bigger themes. So it's kind of like a juggling act, but they seem to pull it off.
Prison Sex, another good example of that.
Yeah, hooker with a penis.
Well, that doesn't like the title is like that, but like the lyrics. Anyway, we can get into like
Hooker with the Penis is funny because being a young kid, like when I was a kid, you see that song title, you kind of gravitate to that song first. And I just remember that was one of the songs where you kind of, it's funny that you open with the lyric. There's one of the songs where you kind of look at the lyrics, you're like, whoa, they're being called like sellouts, but he's saying I sold out way before you even knew who I was.
Yeah.
It's just, and that sort of messaging as for a kid, especially coming up through the grunge, like learning through rock through the grunge era, where selling out was the worst thing you could possibly do. And this guy's like, well, what's your definition of sellout? Do you like just fucking do you?
Exactly. Yeah. What do you mean? Like I gotta stay poor? What do you think Nirvana sold anything? I think they sold some things. So yeah, that's a particular. You're right. Like you gravitate towards it because it's a jokey name, and that's kind of the point. I think that's the point of it because you're like, oh, hooker with penis. You listen to the song. Oh, this is serious. It's like, oh shit. I thought it was OGT.
I guess some fan called him like a whore or a prostitute to the record industry, and he's like, I'm still the man. So hooker with a penis, right?
Oh yeah. So
that's awesome.
So OGT. Like I was like, is that a real term? So I look it up. It's like in Wikipedia, original gangster tool. Like it's like what? Also, like Ænima, like the character, the A and the E fused together. Like that's an actual thing.
I think they did it for this album. I did have a note here, but it's basically kind of like two philosophies, like Ænima, which is like a Jungian philosophy thing, and it's mixing together Ænima, which is, everybody knows what an enema is. So it's just putting those two things together.
Yeah, so the character is like in my fonts. So has Tool changed the course of fonts? Like I was able to copy and paste it.
Oh yeah,
It
no,
was like there's Aeon Flux. I remember seeing it there.
I
Is
think
that
it's
a
an
Okay.
comic book or a
like
movie?
character. I think it's an actual like.
Oh, it's not.
character.
Oh, it's not. It's not Tool then. It's not Tool.
No, I don't think so. You can also get the lowercase AE.
Oh, right, right.
So I guess going back to the biggest song, I said Stinkfist just because that's the only song I really recognize for this album, like the most coming into it. What did you think was the biggest song, right?
Well, I think amongst fans it's probably 46 and 2. For some reason that has like the love from people. It just immediately sounds good. So it's something you can show other people. Check out this band. That clean bass. It's not like abrasive right away, but yeah.
Well, I know for me, 46 and 2 kind of stood out, even just not even knowing it being like a radio single, just hearing the album, because it had that sort of Eastern, like Middle Eastern flavor to it.
Yeah.
And being, a Turkish kid, you're like, whoa, like, Dad, listen to this song. It sounds like Turkish music.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, yeah, those two songs are probably the biggest. 46 and 2 and Stinkfist. I don't know which one's bigger. I guess 46 and 2 is more of the fans. Stinkfist is probably more the general audiences.
Yeah. Jim, you guys remember Jim from Goth Jim from high school?
Yep.
His favorite song was Ænima. Ænima. We connected on
Yeah,
that.
that's a great song too. I love that. That's one of my favorites on the album as well.
Yeah, it won Grammy Award.
Yep.
So I guess we can move on to the next question. Is there an overplayed song, or what do you think is the most overplayed, if there is one?
Well, I would say just the fact that like when you look at the singles that are released on here, and when you listen to the radio, it's pretty much just 46 and 2.
Yeah.
So normally when they jump back to this album, it seems like it's 46 and 2, and that was even back when I was listening to the radio. So I assume it's the same thing now.
That seems to be the one that always gets pulled up. But there's a lot of great songs on this that they could be playing.
Yeah, that's why I was kind of surprised. Like even when the 2 times I saw them live, they only played those 2 songs from Ænima. So it's kind of like play other ones. Like,
yeah.
More, like play a couple more. So I guess those are the only 2 they go back to. But it'd be just maybe live show wise. I don't know if anything's changed now, but it'd be nice for them to play more from this album. But I know their songs are long and they're gonna play new stuff. But
well, yeah, they're more about the art. They don't want. We have to wait a few more years till they're just touring old stuff, the Ænima tour.
Yeah.
But yeah, this album in particular has probably the most songs that you could play on the radio. Yet they only play one.
interesting enough, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Do you how about you, Gordon? Do you think any of them are overplayed or?
No, I didn't have anything for this. I mean, I hear other songs. I mean, if I had to pick a Tool song that's overplayed, I would probably say The Pot, because I remember that one was just like seemed to be nonstop. Yeah. But like, yeah, it doesn't seem like they really play this on the radio, and I don't have a whole lot of exposure to it. So
since their songs are so long, they don't really get played very often, so they're not going to get overplayed. They're more of a treat when you hear them.
Yeah, that's true.
They still do get played though, and they don't do no stupid radio edits, so that's good. You can't.
Well, they're one of the biggest rock bands. They're gonna get played.
Yeah, they've had like I think like at least two albums go like #1 on the Billboard Top 200, which seems crazy. It seems like we haven't talked about like any bands where like they hit the #1. So
yeah, because
I thought that was interesting.
Like, their fans are so diehard, and there's so many of them that when something gets released, they just all march out and buy it. Like I remember buying 10,000 Days like on day of release.
Yep.
So it's just sort of like mandatory.
Well, right. Plus we waited. How long did we wait for 10,000 Days? Like, I just got into Tool when Lateralis came out, and then waited 10 years or something.
Yeah, I don't know what was the break between albums. I don't remember, but
yeah, I think it's 5 years between Lateralis and 10,000 Days.
Yeah,
still feels like a long time.
And then then it's 13 years between 10,000 Days and Fear Inoculum.
Oh my God, the 5-year break feels way longer in my mind. Just because I was younger.
Yeah.
But does it feel like, so I just sidebar question, does it feel longer? Like or do you like with the other bands that Maynard's in, does that fill the void for you? Or is Tool too much of its own thing to be like Perfect Circle doesn't help me here, or Pussifer doesn't help me here?
I think because I'm not much of a Pussifer fan. I never really did a deep dive into that, but I did listen to A Perfect Circle when they came out. So it did seem like, between Ænima and Later Alice, you had the first A Perfect Circle album, I believe.
Yeah, I think you might have two of them.
And then, or was it both of them came out in between?
I think so, yeah.
No,
I'll double check that right now.
No. No, I went. The 13th Step came after. I'm pretty sure.
I thought it came out after Later Alice, because I remember for a while it seemed like Maynard was always around, and then Pussifer came out, and then 10,000.
True, he was like doing cameos in music videos, and he was on the White Pony we talked about.
Yeah. But it seemed like even between Later Alice and 10,000 Days, it was a 5-year break. But since there was like Pussifer and A Perfect Circle stuff still going on, it seemed like there was less of a break for me, at least. But yeah, between 10,000 Days and Fear Inoculum, it was pretty much like, are they even going to release another album?
Yeah, I guess I wasn't waiting on it like I was waiting on 10,000 Days, because I had just come off of Later Alice and I was mesmerized by the band. So, but literally, for my experience of 10,000 Days is like, I love this album, and then as it goes on, I'm like, I usually don't listen to the whole thing. I just listen to the few songs I really like. So, I kind of figured that the new album would be just more of the same, but I don't know.
Yeah,
I gotta listen to it.
For Perfect Circle, Murder came out in 2000, 13th Step came out in 2003, and then Emotive, which I think is a cover album, came out in 2004.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, because that kind of filled in the blank. Even though I wasn't a big fan of that Emotive, I sort of fell off with that album with them.
Yeah, I did listen this week to Perfect Circle. I did listen to a little bit of Pussifer. I really like Pussifer. I heard like 2 of the albums and I thought it was pretty good. Mostly, maybe, I don't know if it's just the week I was having, like doing Tool, 5 albums of Tool for the first couple days, and then a little bit of Perfect Circle, and then Pussifer. It was like, okay, I think I might like Pussifer the best, but I don't know.
I did because I never really did a dive into Pussifer, and I remember listening to a track they released last year or 2 years ago or something, and I was like, it's actually pretty good. Maybe I should jump in and listen, but I don't know. Maybe one day.
Yeah. I recommend. I forget the name of the albums, but there's like one that's like V for Vagina. It's just like these crude, like, it's his humor, right?
Typical Maynard.
Yeah, I feel saying I like Pussifer is like saying, like, for Jack White, like, I like the Rack on Tour is the best from anything Jack White's done.
Yeah,
a little bit. Yeah, well, I've only listened to Pussifer like for a few seconds. I was like, oh, this is like kind of like A Perfect Circle, and then I just turned it off. I'm like, I already like Perfect Circle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, maybe there's some good songs in there, but
yeah, I mean, it's definitely not as heavy as like A Perfect Circle. Well, the first 2 Perfect Circle albums are fairly heavy, but their newest one, which I listened to as well, isn't as heavy. It's more got an electronic tinge to it. It's definitely much softer than the first 2.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess this can take us to what do you think is the most underrated song on this album, Ryan?
I'm gonna maybe say Hooker with a Penis for underrated, because it's not really ever referred to as like one of the best songs, but it stands up there with the singles, I think. In terms of like a song, it's got great verses, choruses. It's a great, yeah. Maybe Push It too. Like there's a whole bunch. I feel like the album, the songs that aren't singles are pretty much right there with the other ones. Hooker with a Penis, was that a single?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I would have said a song like after this album came out, in that time between, I would have said a song like Push It. But I feel like after like Later Alice, they kind of did push it in better ways.
That's true.
But for me, I would say Eulogy. It's a song I've always liked, and it's, track 2. It was like one of the early songs that I was like, whoa, this band is like really good. Maybe I should listen to more of this. But yeah, Eulogy I've always been a really big fan of. And the song that taught me patience, like I said, when the chorus hits, like, it sounds amazing. I love like the rock out during the second chorus, like at the end of the second verse, sorry. But yeah, it's just great. Even like that little drum breakdown in the middle when it's just the drums and the vocals, like,
yeah,
song does so much, and I love it. I love every second of it.
And the lyrics are great too. They like
Yeah.
get into depth about fake martyrs, people
But,
virtue signaling. It's
but
great.
who do you think he's singing about? So like, I always thought he was singing about Bill Hicks, but because he had just died, and the song's called Eulogy, and the album's dedicated to him. But then a lot of people say L. Ron Hubbard or just Jesus Christ. Some people
He's-
say, some people say it's a mix of all three.
it's just like I didn't think it was about anybody, but whoever lines up with the idea of like a fake martyr, somebody who's just basically virtue signaling to try to make themselves look great, but when it comes time to pay the price, they're surprised, or they jump ship, or they're like, whatever, I had nothing to do with it. That sort
But
of idea.
for me, like reading into the lyrics, it almost sounds like he's singing about Bill Hicks but he's writing about him in his style of comedy and in his ideology.
Oh shit, that's getting deep. See what I mean? There's so many layers.
Yeah.
I
That's
gotta
how
listen to it again.
That's how I always like kind of read it. So that's how I always sort of like understood the song. But then, reading this week, you're like, oh, some people say it's about Jesus, which everything's about Jesus. It seems like, and then like L. Ron Hubbard, which I think that there's like the L. Ron Hubbard reference in the title track as well. So I don't know, a lot of possibilities, I guess.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. Maybe it's about all of them. But
Yeah.
I should have mentioned Eulogy. Yeah, that's like probably I like that song as much as I like 46 and 2, I would say. So
yeah, that's the thing. Like these some of these songs, like I just love. Like it's hard to. It's almost like I love them all in a vacuum, not just as part of an album. So it's hard to pick which baby I love the most.
Yeah. Yeah, because you can listen to just a couple songs from this album and like, oh yeah, sweet, I got like almost 15 minutes of Tool or whatever, and you're like, that's sweet, I love these songs. And then the next time you listen to the album, you pick two completely different songs. You're not going back to the same ones because there's just so much to look forward to.
How about for you, Gordon? What's underrated for you? What's a song that maybe you don't think the average Tool fan might appreciate that you particularly like?
I put Hooker with a Penis as well. I don't know if anybody actually likes that song or thinks it's underrated or anything, but
Yes.
I remember hearing that song before, so that's why I kind of gravitate back to it. I mean, it's got a crazy title too, but yeah, I thought that was kind of underrated.
But what I will add to underrated actually is a lot of the this might sound crazy, but it's a lot of the in between stuff, like a Useful Idiot and like Negative Ions and stuff. I find that they add to the album. They're not just sort of filler in between songs. Like maybe
Really? Okay,
maybe
hold
the
on.
die,
You're
ear-
the guy.
maybe the die ear von Satan
You're
could have been cut, but I
not
like
listening to that shit. No way.
no, I like the way Useful Idiot flows right into 46 and 2.
Okay,
And
true.
Negative Ions they played when we saw them live. So it was
Yeah.
kind of cool.
That's weird. Out of all this,
And I like that it's 4 minutes long because when you first hear it, you're like, this is going to be short. And then when Third Eye starts with the Bill Hicks quotes, and it's funny, and then it kind of cuts out. And there's another quote that's kind of muddled before the song even kicks in. And then the song does so much. That whole just ending to me is just so epic. And considering listening to Negative Ions to Third Eye, it's like a 18-minute thing. I used to do that all the time as like a 15-year-old because I just thought it sounded so cool. Like
Yeah.
just put that on your headphones, let it play out. It was amazing.
yeah, totally. I get that, but I'm also like not gonna listen to all the things every time. Like, come on, you're the guy who's always talking about the skits. I'm not gonna listen to the skit every time.
That's what I'm saying though. I feel like they serve a purpose here. Like when you listen to, like especially when you listen to the album and like the messaging and stuff, and like Ænima, like when you get to the end of that song, it almost sounds like the fucking wave is hitting that he's singing
Yeah.
about, just with the way the drums and the guitars, and the song even sort of has like a surf vibe to it. Like for me, at least, like the kind of the solos and stuff. So then when that song is done, you kind of get Ions. It just sounds like everything is sort of like settled back down, and then you get Third Eye, which does all the things. Like you don't know what's going to happen next in that song. Every part of it is different. Just such a great way to end the album, in my opinion. But
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I would say
what I
like
mean by like those filler tracks like serve a purpose.
yeah. Yeah, they do. And like the intermission too, how it leads into Jimmy is kind of cool. So
Yeah,
I usually since it's so short, I usually listen to that.
yeah.
Um
The
yeah.
only one I can do without is that Die Ear von Satan, where I kind of get what they're trying to do, but it's almost like a joke that goes on too long.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a skip.
Yeah, because in that he's just sort of saying cookie recipe.
Yeah, that's all it is in
Yeah,
German.
but it's in German over this all those
Well,
industrial.
it's a cannabis cookie
Yeah,
recipe. Yeah.
yeah. But then yeah, it just sounds like it's
The
Hitler or
German.
something.
Yeah.
I don't know what that says about me, but it just doesn't sound right.
So would you say Third Eye's or those last two tracks are your favorite tracks in East, or what's your favorite tracks on this album? Or favorite track, I guess, if you had to pick one.
This becomes a hard question because there's so many
Impossible.
favorite tracks. Like I made a list of like 4 songs and it doesn't even include that Negative Ions Third Eye, which I love. Like, and I just remember listening to that as a kid, like, prying open my third eye, just being like, fucking right.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. but then at the same time, it's like I can't not say 46 and 2. But then what about Stinkfist and Ænima and Eulogy? Like, I don't know. This is a hard one for me to pick a favorite song. Like, I almost felt like switching the rank to ranking song, but then that would have became hard. So
Yeah.
So if I had to pick one, I'd probably say Stinkfist, just because that's what introduced me to the band and made me an instant fan. So it always has like that special place with me. I always go to that one. Like it opens the album even, and like I go to that one a lot when I revisit songs. And it has like the music video, which was a big part of me getting into them. So probably for me, 46 and 2 is my. Sorry, Stinkfist.
Can't choose. I get it, man. I totally get it.
Sorry, Stinkfist is probably if I had to pick one, probably Stinkfist because I can think of enough justifications.
Yeah. If you have to balance it, it is. I
Yeah.
mean, that's a good choice. It's very clever with the lyrics, the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a very like verse chorus, the first half of it anyway. So it's easy to get into. But that's an impossible question.
Yeah.
Like we haven't even talked about H, which is an amazing song, and it has an amazing build up at the end. I don't know. I really love. It really taught me something about just having a loop, like a guitar loop, and how powerful it can be just having chords moving underneath. That song in particular sticks out too.
That's
So
funny you said H because that's one of the ones I probably don't jump to all the time.
really,
Like it's not that I like if listening through the album, like I'll let it play through, but I wouldn't say it's a particular favorite for me. But there's like good parts to it. I love that drony bass distorted sound, which they would go on to use a
yeah.
lot, like over the next few albums. It has like a sexy feel to it in a way with the all muting and the bass line and everything. But yeah,
The ending, just how it's building up, and then the switches, and there's all these little switches when it's building up.
that's what I was trying to break down though, because there's so many good sections on this album. Whereas like that song for me, yeah, there are parts I like, but if I had to pick a song, and like it is a song that personally I don't revisit as much, so for me that's not one of my favorites personally. But
Yeah. Okay.
see how
Yeah.
someone else would love it. You know what I mean? Like I still totally get it.
Yeah. It's not constant for me. It's not like the whole time through that song is amazing, or I'm not. I am hooked because I know it, and it's that whole have patience. But I have patience for the ending because I love the ending so much. So, I could sit through the beginning, no problem. But I love the beginning too. I love the whole thing. But yeah, I can't answer your question, Gordon. I don't know. Stinkfist, Eulogy, H, 46-2, Hooker with a Penis, Push It, Ænima, Jimmy's barely making the list, and Third Eye for sure.
Yeah, for me, I like Third Eye a lot. It's weird that it's the longest song, but like after listening to Tool like all week, it's like 13 minutes is like nothing. But yeah, pretty much all the reasons I had, I guess my high school or 15-year-old moment, just like the prying at my third eye part. Like, well, the song starts pretty quiet, like a little bit of the heartbeat getting the Bill Hicks quote kind of builds up, but then when it like was it like around 9.5 minutes in, when that part hits, you're just like, fucking right, like this is amazing.
The thing I love about that song too is like you don't know where it's gonna go next. Like you'll be listening to one part and you're like, okay, they're probably gonna kick in that guitar riff again, but then does something completely different. And you're like, whoa. It's just kind of, and it's the last track. So when you reach the last track, you think you figured out the band to some extent, and you're like, no, I have no idea what the fuck's coming next. Which you didn't know what was coming next with the next album, which kind of pushed all that even further.
Totally. Yeah. It seems like on this album, I don't know if they kind of moved away from this a little bit, but it seems like on this album, every song there is some moment that is like a hook that you can wait for. Like even in Jimmy, I was thinking, okay, wait a minute, because I was gonna cross it off the list as one I didn't like as much. But then there's like that hook in the middle, which basically like a chorus. It's like, oh yeah, that part's sweet. And then the whole thing that happens after is really good. So it's like, fuck, I don't know.
I found a lot with Later Alice, lyrically, his lyrics don't fit the structure of the music. He's just sort of like, these are his lyrics. He's just going to sing it through the song. It's not going to be verse, chorus, whatever. It's just
more linear.
Kind of its own thing. Yeah, which is awesome. I love some of my favorite moments are when the music is changing and his lyric is still kind of being presented in the same. I don't know. He does a lot of cool stuff lyrically, but yeah, the way they write lyrics, especially with the music, it seemed like it did have a change after this album.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, just like, oh, sorry. Just a quick note about the lyrics. Basically, I think the music gets put together, and then Maynard's like just strictly focus on the lyrics. So he'll come in and write all the lyrics afterwards. And on Lateralis, for that song specifically, it's like gets pretty crazy because that's like the whole Fibonacci numbers sequence thing, and like he saw like the weird time signature, and then he kind of just made the lyrics for that song like syllables, so they match like the Fibonacci numbers or sequence. And like to me that's just like crazy. Like I think it was like Wednesday night, I was watching like YouTube videos doing the research for this, and then all of a sudden like I get into that and I'm like, okay, am I putting on the tinfoil hat and I'm just gonna go for it? Am I gonna go full Tool? But I kind of stopped there, but that part is super interesting.
That's the thing for me, whereas like when I was a kid, I found a lot of the stuff like really interesting and stuff getting into them, whereas now it's like, is the songs good?
Right.
Whereas like still that background stuff is still there, and like I do like that the band, like, you know, I like when bands kind of do something and keep stuff interesting for fans and having, you know, but it still comes down to the songs, do they rock or not? And these ones,
well, yeah, they still have to sound good, and I hope that's still top of mind when Tool's writing music. It's not just math. They're not like, I hope so.
Right.
Yeah.
Like without doing research, would I have known that? Like I would have never known that just hearing the song.
It's like even with Radiohead, when you hear about some of the stuff they do, it's like, okay, is the song good though? Like the fact that you wrote a song about, you know, based on Carl Jung's theory of quantum, whatever. Is it really okay? But can I tap my foot to it? Can I air guitar to it? You know.
But so okay, yeah. But sometimes like
they're doing it, so I'm not. I'm just saying that stuff, it only really matters if the music's good.
You're right. It's like those are the frills. You can't just be all frills.
Yeah.
Right. So I think we kind of hinted at this earlier, but is there a song you skip? I'll answer real quick. I've listened to this album, I guess, 3 times this week, and I didn't skip any songs once. I mean, like I said earlier, I think it's more of an experience. So if I'm going to put on a Tool album, I'm probably just I'm preparing to listen to the whole 70 or 80 minutes, and I'm not going to skip anything. I've never done a Tool playlist, so maybe if I started doing that, I'd start skipping things, but I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I skip because I just love the song so much, and for you like it's fresher, so like you want to experience the whole album. But like I just love these songs in isolation outside of this album's existence so much that like when I put it on, if I'm not gonna have it on in the background, if I'm like doing something, or if, I'll go Stinkfist Eulogy H, then right to 46 and 2, and then right to Hit Hooker with a Penis, and I might listen to the intermission because it feeds into Jimmy, and then I'll go to Push It. I'll just skip through. I'll, sk- I'll skip pretty much all the stuff that Anise still listens to for some reason.
For me, I'm kind of similar to Ryan, where it's for me now because they, their albums are kind of like pretty long to kind of get through, and I wish I had more time to just kind of, I guess now we're stay at home order again, but to have time to just throw headphones on, lay back, and just let the album play out. For me, I just more jump back more to songs, but pretty much every song on here I'll jump back to when I'm
Yeah.
when I'm diving into Tool. The only songs I kind of don't is like I was saying earlier with H, and then though when I first discovered this as a kid, where the intermission goes into Jimmy, it's the same riff. Jimmy isn't one of my particular favorites either, so that's not one I will revisit as much. But I do listen to both those songs. It's not like I will, if I'm doing an album listen through, I'm going to listen through the album. But those are probably the two that I don't revisit at all. But other than that, like this album is pretty much regular rotation. Because for me, especially when you get more into the metal side of things, there's very little of stuff that fills this sort of need for me. And
Yeah.
especially like Tool specifically, like they just are so unique that they fill a specific need musically. And when I do a deep dive into Tool, it'll be pretty much all the albums. So it'll be like, but different songs each time. So it might be one time Stinkfist and Schism and The Pot. The next time it's Jambi and Hush and Eulogy. It's always like kind of different songs I'll jump to. But yeah,
Yeah.
but those two are probably the ones I jump to the least, H and Jimmy.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess kind of random question. Since I was all week, I was just kind of like, okay, I'm on to the next one because I just did it in chronological order. And every time I turn on or start an album on Spotify, I'm like, oh, will this one be like 55 minutes? And every one's like 70 minutes or longer. Like I think the most recent one's almost 90 minutes long.
Yeah.
Do you think that hurts them? Like they're people like getting into them, listening to them?
I think that's sort of their like thing though.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's almost like if you're a fan of Tool, this is what you are come to expect at this point. These long epic songs. That's what I was saying. For me, I became a little detached because, especially with Fear Inoculum and the way my relationship with Tool is now, where it is more just jumping to tracks. If I'm jumping to the newer tracks, I don't have much of a relationship with them yet because they are so new, and it was hard for me to even form one because they're so long that my like to get through one song is longer than my drive to work. So
Yeah.
like
Right.
I'm listening in the car while I'm driving to work, I can't get through it. The only time I could listen was at the gym, but then the gym's closed. So
Yeah.
so like especially like this week, get preparing for this, that album specifically was hard to listen through just because I was in the with like the busy live I have now, it's hard to fit in, even two songs from that album when I'm driving
Yeah.
to work or to the store or whatever.
Yeah, it's like they're so unpredictable. When you were younger, you did all that work already, listening to Tool over and over, so you can revisit those songs. You already have that all memorized.
Yeah.
But to listen to a new Tool song is a little bit more difficult. Unless, what I think does hurt them though, like not that they would need like shorter songs or less songs on the album or a shorter album. It's just they had kind of on this album really established a formula. It's not in a bad way because they really explored it and they played around with it a lot. Where you basically, and this was happening on Undertow too, where you'd have like a verse chorus kind of deal, and something like that. Not exactly that, but a song structure that you could feel almost like this could go on the radio, and then it would veer off into a longer bridge, sometimes coming back or with some epic ending or something like that. But you had that first strong like songlet structure off the top to like grab you in, like Stinkfist. You get into that verse and the chorus, and then sure, we can spend 5 minutes going off on an epic or something like that. Don't worry, there's a gem at the end too. That balance really is what makes Tool so special to me. I mean, that's what draws me in and keeps me in. That's why I love this album so much. So the further they moved away from that in Lateralis, but they were still in there a little bit.
Yeah.
And then yeah.
That's what I was saying, trying to say earlier with like Autumn, for me at least, Ænima and Later Alice was like their peak just because it was a time where they were still being progressive and doing a lot of different stuff and having their, crazy bridges, extended chorus, like solos or whatever they were doing, the outros, they would have pre-choruses, choruses, refrains.
You can't
like
even categorize it.
yeah, they were just doing all these different parts of songs and it was like cool. And then with 10,000 Days, I remember not getting into it as much. Like at that point, it was like certain tracks were jumping out. And then now, like even like looking on Spotify with the new album, like I know everything was released at once at the same time for Tool, pretty much. Fear Inoculum coming a week or two later, or a month later, or whatever it was. But when you look at the streams, Numa is the only song that's in the top 10 in streams, which is also the song that I play when I revisit Fear Inoculum. Like that's the song I've kind of like, is the one that stuck out to me when I first listened to it. So when I do want to revisit Fear Inoculum, it's usually that song. And then when I look at the streams, I'm like, oh, it seems like everyone is revisiting that one particular song. Considering that's the newest album, you would expect, I thought maybe you'd get 5 of the songs in the top 10 just because everyone would want to jump and listen to it. But it seemed like people were jumping back, listening to the hits. So it seems like a lot of people do what we're doing.
Right.
Where it's just like the hits are getting a little thinner on the albums. Like with 10,000 Days, you had those 2 or 3 tracks or were really good.
Yeah.
And Lateralis, a lot of it is really good, but it's not as dense in terms of like song form as this album, Ænima.
Because when you look at their top 10 on Spotify, you have The Pot, Vicarious, and Jambi from 10,000 Days. And then you have Schism and Later Alice from Later Alice, 46 and 2 and Stinkfist and Ænima from Ænima, and then just Numa. So it seems like everyone's just sort of revisiting that one track, or maybe it is on a playlist. And that's the thing, like the album is good. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy the album, but I'm at the point now for me to get into something, I have to be able to digest it more, and it's becoming harder for me to digest, and like when being older and just having a busy life, and the songs being 9+ minutes on average.
And if there's no sing along at any point, and you're not having to learn the guitar parts because you're not like, so yeah.
I mean, what happened a lot of times is I'd put the album on, I'd get 2 or 3 tracks in, and then I'd throw on like The Pot, and then
yeah,
2 or 3 more songs, and then throw on Stinkfist, because it was almost like they were missing. I know it's like a very general, maybe I'm going against what the Tool cults, what they've come to expect, or what a Tool fan is supposed to be and what they want. But for me, I still want those, like, I'm not even saying give me a 3-minute pop song. I'm saying give me like a 5-6 minute song where I can get into it. It has a chorus I can sing along to. It's kind of missing those elements that, when I put on Tool, a big part of it is I sing along while I'm driving in the car or whatever I'm doing.
Yeah. So Gordon, you mentioned like Maynard just comes in after the fact. Maybe back then, or back in 1996 or 95 when this was, I don't know how long it took them to record it, but maybe when they were working on this, like they made more space for Maynard, and like as time goes on, they're just getting more lost in their own instrumental craziness. I don't know. For whatever reason, I agree with you. I think we can criticize Tool. It's okay. They're not perfect. And I also would like more songs with just a little bit more of that balance away from I love proggy crazy music, don't get me wrong, but you need a balance, and give me a reason to listen to the rest of it, to get to know the rest of it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you guys are absolutely right on that, where I mean, the earlier stuff has more traditional songs, but they've leaned into the length. Like Fear Inoculum, the physical version has 7 songs and it's 79 minutes. So it's just double digits across the board. So yeah, I get that. I mean, I'm always scared about Tool because it's like, if I say something wrong, is somebody gonna show up at my door and be like, just demand an apology or something?
Right now. I got
Yeah,
Maynard
exactly.
on live stream. No.
He's wearing a bra and painted blue.
Typical.
Okay, so I guess that kind of wraps up some song questions. Did you guys have anything that we may have missed or that you want to talk about?
Oh,
We should also mention that this was because with Opiate and Undertow it was a different bass player.
oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So the bass player I did see has some credits on some of the songs on this album, like a handful, but like
I got on
that's about it.
Stinkfist, Eulogy, Push It, and
some of the singles. Yeah.
all the bigger tracks. He has writing credits, but he doesn't actually perform on the album.
Oh, he
Right.
just wrote the bass line.
Probably in the room, or not even necessarily. He's probably just in the room when the song was written.
I could be as well.
But yeah, no, I did find on this album is when you did see a bit of a change in the bass lines. Like the bass started playing a different role in a lot of the songs.
Yes.
Whereas the only song that it really stuck out in prior was like the intro of like Hush and Sober, but it's just sort
Sober,
of that
yeah.
doing it,
Yeah.
but it's just sort of that kind of thing. Whereas this, it seemed like, you know, a song like 46 and 2, it's doing so much.
Those are the two. Compare the intro to Sober and the intro to 46 and 2, and you can get the different bass players right away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I prefer. I thought that I hated Paul Demore or whatever. Or he was horrible or anything, but I did like the addition of Justin Chancellor on this album. It kind of gave him a different element. And then even I remember going back and listening to the previous band he was in. I believe it's called Peach. You could definitely hear the influence, like
Actually,
the bass.
Interesting.
I seem to remember, like, maybe we dug that up through Napster back in the day.
Yeah, it was one of those like, because when Internet and Downloading, we were kind of touched on in the Weezer episode, but when that all came out, it was sort of like filling in the holes of all the back catalog of the bands we like from the 90s.
It was an amazing, like, that will never happen again, where Napster connected everybody's catalogs. You could find the weirdest stuff, like the weirdest there's Tool live versions that I'll never hear again because it was on like one guy's computer. Like, yeah, damn copyright.
So I did see some crazy video. I don't know. Have you guys seen this? Where he's performing Push It live, and like a fan jumps on stage, and he's a martial artist, so he like grabs the fan. The fan kind of goes up and puts his hand on his shoulder. He grabs the fan, flips him over his shoulder onto the ground, puts him in a rear naked snake chokehold, and then so the fan, like, it's not hard. He's not applying pressure. He's still singing the song, and the fan's like, yeah, like showing like he's okay. And then so he's got him, and then he finally flips the fan over like onto his stomach, so he's lying like prone on the stage on his stomach, and he just sits on him for like the rest of the song. So it's like it's got to be over 10 minutes straight where he's just playing the song, and by the end the fans no longer like cheering. He's just like lying on the ground, like he doesn't know what to do. It's awkward, but it's so great at the same time.
Where's security when this is happening?
Well, some other fans are jumping on, and security's kind of taking them. But like once they saw what Maynard did to that guy, they're just like, okay, we're gonna let that go. And then once Maynard finally gets off him, I think when the song ends, that's when security comes in and takes him off.
I find since Tool doesn't really post much like additional content online, like it's hard to find. Like I don't even think there is any like good quality live Tool videos.
Right.
I think there's one decent one of Sober that's professionally recorded that's on there, but there's like a cool video showing Danny Carey playing drums to one of the tracks. I can't remember which one, but there's one where it's a vocal coach and it's a Sober live video and she's kind of critiquing it. That's kind of cool because she's like, well, this guy's voice is really impressive, and she was like kind of impressed by his vocal performance and how just sort of he has so much emotion and when he's singing and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, it's kind of cool hearing like getting justification from someone who doesn't even listen to this music to be like, this guy's a great voice.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about Tool. They're respected by like musicians from all different, because like we didn't listen to metal and we gravitated towards Tool, so like a lot of people coming from different places can pick up on it.
Yeah, so but we were sort of primed too, because like this album was, because with Later Alice they sort of started tuning down, whereas this album they weren't yet. And at this time too was when we're getting like Rage Against the Machine. We got Tool, Nine Inch Nails, which kind of led us into the dark times of new metal of the late 90s. Really, because you got to think like Korn and stuff were out around this time as well, right? So this was all part of that sort of more commercially friendly metal, because it wasn't your typical like speed metal or Metallica metal. this like the proggy metal, which I guess
Yeah.
new metal would fall into a bit of the proggy stuff.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm certainly glad there's no rapping on a Tool album.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe that might
Actually,
at this
it's
point.
funny. It's funny because a lot of it is just like presentation. Because there's moments like when you're listening to some tracks and they're rocking out, you're like, this could be a Rage Against the Machine's riff.
Yeah.
Like it
Yeah.
would perfectly fit. And I believe Adam Jones and Tom Morello were in a band together prior, because Adam
Yeah.
Jones is a trained bass player and he was playing bass in a band with Tom Morello prior to Tool and Rage. So
Right. Yeah. So those guys were like kind of friends. There is definitely a connection there. And Tom Morello credits Maynard for introducing him to like drop D tuning and stuff like that. So there was a brief period of time, because I guess they all kind of were in LA at the same time. I think Adam Jones was friends with Tom Morello first, but then they all kind of met each other, and that's how they came together. But there was a time, it's kind of like a sliding door situation, where like they were both hanging out with Maynard and what's his name, Zach De La Rocha, and they were more or less trying them out to see who would be the lead singer of Rage Against the Machine, and they went with Zach. So it's kind of interesting to see like what Rage Against the Machine would have been like if Maynard was on it. Would Tool exist? Would Zach be part of Tool? I don't know, probably not, but
I think things worked out.
they worked out. Yeah, I think you're right.
pretty well. But it's funny because Maynard is on the first Rage album.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's featured on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's crazy how it's like the possibilities. But
can you imagine that if it was the same writing process? Tool just like does their usual thing, and then okay, Zach, throw on some rhymes. It's like what? He's like, what the hell am I supposed to do here? Yeah, I want to hear that album now. Nice.
So I think yeah, I want to hear the algorithm actually.
Algorithm version.
So I guess this can take us to the artwork. You guys talked about a little bit before. Like I mentioned, I didn't own this album, but it did come with like a lens thing for you to kind of see different images or something like that, right?
The cover was like the lenticular, so it like moved, and then so same as when you took the CD out, underneath the CD was clear, and you could do the same thing. But I believe in later releases it was just the black at the bottom. But then I also remember the booklet, for some reason, like where it folds, it was all sort of serrated, so you could rip it apart, I guess, if you wanted to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it had all the lyrics inside. I mean, that's how I remember following along the lyrics with the songs and stuff. But yeah, it was all like that trippy DMT imagery.
Yeah.
Nice.
It is pretty trippy. Like, just the album cover. Like, what are you even looking at?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Adam Jones, I believe, does all the artwork with that, because he does all the music videos as well.
Yeah, because he has like a background. I believe he was like prior to the band, he was like a special effects artist. He like did work on Terminator 2. If you watch like the special features on Terminator 2, they talk to him in an interview.
Oh, really? That's pretty cool. Yeah, because I saw he did like Predator 2, he did Jurassic Park as well, a few other things. But yeah, that's really cool. I should watch this.
When you actually watch a Terminator 2 behind the scenes, because you get Adam Jones in it, and then you get what's his name, that T-1000. What's his name?
Oh, like Robert Patrick.
Robert Patrick. He's wearing a Nine Inch Nails hat because at the time his brother Robert Patrick was a guitar player for Nine Inch Nails, who then later went on to start Filter.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
so crazy.
Yeah, had some rock legacy in that movie.
Yeah, and it had that Guns N' Roses song, which was like super big at the time.
Yeah, and then he's wearing the Public Enemy shirt.
Right. Yeah. The cops are the bad guys. It's like so ahead of its time. So I guess this can move us on to kind of some more general band questions. How often is this album or is Tool in your rotation, Ryan?
Quite often. Like, I think I've gone through periods where I didn't listen to them for a long period of time, but then as soon as you put it back on, it's like supercharged right away. It's because all that work you did when you're younger, well, I did, memorizing all the little changes and stuff, it's still there. So, it's actually a real treat leaving it for a while and then coming back, because all those memories of all those details come flooding back, and it's just that much more. Yeah. But all the time, like, and bits of Tool. will come
Yeah.
and but this album more than anything else, I would say.
Yeah.
Material from this album, yeah.
How about you, Anis?
Yeah, I'm like the same as Ryan there. Like there's obviously times where I didn't listen to him as much. I remember sort of after sort of like the later Alice era when I was kind of getting into the indie rock and stuff. I wasn't listening to them as much.
Yeah.
I was sort of into the college rock thing at the time, but after that period, I sort of kind of got back into them, and then especially when they did that, when they actually put their stuff on Spotify, they were more accessible for me personally to play, just because my CDs are all in boxes now. And like prior to that, it'd be I'd jump onto YouTube and kind of, oh, I'm going to listen to Ænima. Oh, I'm going to listen to Stinkfist. Oh, I'm going to listen to The Pot. Oh, I'm going to listen to the Schism or whatever. Whereas now, because with Spotify, I can just put a song on and let 3 or 4 songs play out. It's not as picky choosy. Not that I don't do that with Tool. A lot of what I do with Tool is that. Like it's very rare that I'll put on an album from top to bottom, but the ones I do that to the most is this one and Later Alice.
Yeah.
But I play music from every release pretty much.
Yeah, for me, I guess it's not applicable because I really kind of dove into him this week. But I'm not afraid to listen to him. So, I mean, like I said, you have to be in a specific mood, but at the same time, I probably wouldn't mind just doing like play most popular and just go through Spotify like that and do like wherever that takes me. Just because I probably recognize songs, singles and stuff like that. The singles you'll come to mind first, right? So yeah, I'm not afraid to do it. It's never been in my rotation.
Don't be afraid, Gordon.
Yeah.
I'll also just mention it's a good song for like a drummer to work, like just get a good drum workout, get warmed up. Although I made the mistake of doing that this week after not playing along with Tool for like since forever, and I immediately broke my thin jazz sticks, which sucks because I'm pretty sure the drum store is closed. Right now it's closed.
Up to order online.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I just remember even when playing guitar, playing their songs were fun because I remember covering like Sober and Stinkfist. They're just fun to play.
Fans of Crime, that was good.
A
weird song to sing, definitely a little.
What song? Sorry, did you guys cover?
We covered Sober, but we more often Stinkfist. We played Stinkfist.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Nice. So I guess where do you guys rank this album in the band's discography? I'll go first just because I mean I don't know how much weight my ranking will carry. I went with Ænima first just because I was pretty happy with this album, hearing it from beginning to end for the first time, a few times throughout the week. I thought it's a pretty solid album. Then I went with Latter Alice just because I've most familiarity. Then I like Undertow because there's a few songs that I recognized early on. When I downloaded songs in the past, I didn't know which album they were from, so I recognized more songs from that. Even though that album's easily their heaviest album, it feels like early like Rage Against the Machine, like a very, very heavy album. And then Fear Inoculum, and then 10,000 Days. So Fear Inoculum, I liked where it kind of went a little more electronic. It wasn't always, I wouldn't call it electronic at all, but it seemed you could tell they're changing things up and they're adding new instruments or I guess weapons to their arsenal. So that's why I put it above 10,000 Days, although The Pot is like a really good song.
Yeah, your list was kind of similar to mine. But I went because I was going back and forth for Ænima or Later Alice being my favorite, just because of which one I could listen to them a lot. Like those are two I kind of like played the shit out of, like to the point where my jewel case for Ænima was all smashed up and I couldn't change it because it was a lenticular cover. And then even the Later Alice came in a slip cover that's plastic, that's all ripping and it's all dirty. It's like but I went with Ænima just because of it, the one I got into first. So nostalgia always trumps everything for me. And then Later Alice, then Undertow. I found it funny you said it was the heaviest because on Later Alice and future albums, they literally get heavier by tuning the guitars lower. But I know what you mean. It's the most aggressive. Maybe
the hardest hitting.
Yeah, it's like the most like kind of hardcore sounding.
Right.
Of the albums, and then I went 10,000 Days, and I put Opiate ahead of Fear Inoculum. I put Fear Inoculum at the bottom, and it's not that I hate it, and it's not. I think I made my points kind of earlier, but it's just sort of I haven't. I think I will at some point get into it, but I just haven't got into it yet.
Right.
I'm just at the
Yeah.
point where I'm like trying to put some of those songs from that album like regularly into my Tool deep dives, so I can see that album sort of moving up over the years. But it's hard to compare when it was 15 years or whatever between albums or whatever the hell it was.
Yeah, 13 years.
13 years. So it's like I've spent 13 more years with all this other music than this, so it's hard to put it above anything else. So that's why I put it at the bottom. I put it at the bottom with the caveat that I expect it to move up over time.
You expect it to beat Opiate. I like Opiate. Opiate's
But
really good.
no, that's what I'm saying. It might move up, and this whole order might change in another 5-10 years because of what I'm listening to more in the future.
Yeah. I'm gonna leave it off my list because I haven't listened to it, obviously. But I'm gonna just guess that it would probably be at the bottom just because of the same thing. It's gonna take me time. I couldn't have listened to it in a week and gotten to know it like I know these other albums.
Because even like, to be honest, like 10,000 Days, it probably took me like a solid like 2-3 years where I was like playing some of the songs on that just as much as I was playing songs from other albums when I would go back to listen to Tool. So
Same.
Yeah.
And also, I had the same deal with Lateralis or Ænima.
Yeah.
Because like Ænima really is like almost like more of a punch in the face, but Lateralis kind of opened my mind more. Like it kind of like exploring different musical ideas more, push my limits, and I was growing with it. So almost like there's more nostalgia for that for me, because it was coming out at the time. So, but Ænima is arguably maybe a better album. I'm gonna have to keep it at 1. So Ænima 1. Lateralis is 2, and then Undertow. And Undertow, Gordon, you said it was the heaviest album. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I think it went more aligned with what like Anis was saying. It's like the hardest hitting or the most aggressive. Yeah. That's probably more or less what I mean.
Yeah. Well, maybe like the bass and the drums sound is a bit heavier than more like hard rocky, as opposed to the guitar. The guitar seems to get heavier over time. I would agree.
But you could also like an album like Undertow and then the Rage Against the Machine self-titled. Those are kind of like they almost fall in the same line. Like Rage is a bit more hardcore and Tool's a bit more metal, but they're of the same vein.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like the whole time I was listening to Undertow, I just kept thinking of like that first Rage. I guess the self-titled, the first Rage.
Yeah.
Well, then I would put 10,000 Days because I really love some of the songs, and like you were saying, it took a while for me to get into, and still I'm not. A lot of it I don't go back to. But then Opiate, I remember downloading like the song Opiate, sweet song. So that one kind of like drew me in for that album.
I remember for me, I got Ænima first because that's the one I was sort of introduced to, and then when I was gonna go back and buy older albums, I'm like, I'll go in order. I'll buy Opiate. So I got Opiate, and then I got
you telling me this, yeah.
Then I got Undertow after, and then Lateralis came out. So.
Yeah. Opiate's pretty short. Isn't it like 5 or 6 tracks or something?
Yeah, it's technically an EP, I guess.
Yeah.
And like half the songs are live.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I really like Hush, and now it's like the only music video where they're in it.
Yeah.
And it's not on YouTube.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, not like on their, not posted from their official page.
Right.
Which is weird because I wondered if it's because they're in it walking naked, but it's just funny because the song's about censorship and it's the one being censored off of YouTube. So
yeah, that is pretty funny. Yeah. Can you imagine them playing Hush now? I'm sure it's not on their set list. Can you imagine them having a song like Hush on an album? We'll see where they go next. I
saw the best comment when I was because sometimes I like to go on to YouTube and just read people's comments of what people say. And on Hush, the funniest comment was, I just discovered Tool recently, and the most amazing thing about this song is that it's under 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's true. That's the only one, really.
Yeah, I think I totally like fucked up because I didn't hear that EP at all because I didn't include it because it's not like a studio album. It's not a full length album, but I really should. I'll go back and listen to it after we're done here.
Yeah, it's good. Like you'll, especially if you like Undertow, is of the same vein. Because
Okay.
it's funny because they're the type of band that when Undertow came out, which goes to what the lyrics of Hooker with a Penis are about. When Undertow came out, they said it was too commercial and they gone too soft from Opiate and they sold out. And then when Ænima came out, same thing. And then yeah, but then now they're just sort of, you know, legends or whatever ever since. So yeah.
Interesting. So what is where do you see their peak being? I mean, you can define it however you want. I honestly don't know how to answer this question because it just seems like Tool's always kind of had a presence and have been relevant and people have always loved them. So I don't know what their true peak is. Like I said at the beginning, there's songs when I downloaded that were from like their first album, their first studio album, and I thought it was from like Lateralis. So I have no idea. What do you think is their peak?
I would probably say when Later Alice came out, almost for the same reasons, because it's funny because it came out the same year, I think same day as the Weezer Green album. I always equate those two albums together because they were 90s bands coming back after years apart. And I forgot to mention this in the Weezer album, but above my bed I had a Green album poster. But then on my wall I had a poster of Adam Jones and Justin Chancellor because it's the era where I was putting posters on my wall, but that was coming out. And at that time, there was like just for Tool, it was just such a push because I know they only had 2 albums under their belt when Later Alice came out, but it seemed like they were a legacy act coming back, and everyone was just so amped. And it's partially because their music is so different, so good, so unique. It's a artist music, and it had been a while. There's hype, and plus at the time the heavy music was back, so was popular. So you had the new metal being popular. So a lot of those fans were fans of Tool in the 90s, if they knew who Tool was. So everything just seemed like a big deal, and it seemed like when that album came out, it popped.
Yeah.
So it just seemed culturally that's when they sort of became more of like a household name. But yeah, for me, I'd say that was their peak. But I could also hear Ænima because it did win a Grammy and all that. So
yeah, but Schism, like people who I wouldn't have expected to like that song were like, "Oh, it's a really cool song. It sounds really cool." I'm like, "What? What?" Like people who like fans of punk music or just stuff that isn't like weird like this. Schism was on the radio a lot, and it's a big song. This really didn't make any sense.
I was probably one of those people. I was like, I like that song, but I don't have any connection to anything else.
Because I think for a band that's like they do something that's so different and unique, and people when they hear it, they know they're hearing something different and unique, and they know they're hearing something good, even if they don't like it. I think people, even if they didn't like Tool, they would probably find the music interesting and kind of understand the appeal of it all.
Yeah, they have enough cred that you're like, okay, let's listen. Maybe I just have to get to know the song. So that's what I really hope they're not abusing with like later out with the new album. And you guys know the album, so you can answer this. That we trust that you're gonna listen to Tool, you're gonna learn all the notes, but you still like. Does that mean that they're not putting in the whatever? People will just listen to whatever we put out. I hope not. I hope that's not the end.
No, I don't think that's what they're falling into. I think they're just almost. I don't want to speak for anyone or not that it's like a negative thing, but it's almost like they're trying too hard. Like, I don't know, like for them, is writing a song even fun? Or maybe that's what they find fun in the details and in the building these epics. So I don't know if their music is good and if they're enjoying doing it and their fans are generally liking Tool, and like they were touring when the pandemic hit and they were sold out everywhere. It was hard to get tickets. So they're doing everything right.
Yeah. And I do trust them. And I'm gonna listen to the new album, and I'm excited to hear what they do next. So they got me.
They're the type of band, like even before I even listen to a new album, I assume it's good. Like I don't assume they're gonna release shit, especially since they release so scarce. It's like it's something I brought up a bunch. Like when you compare a band like Weezer, who's dropping, because they're the 2 bands that came back that same year. So you have a band like Weezer who's kind of dropping multiple albums a year, and it's just sort of becomes so redundant. And whereas like Tool is such a unique band, have such a unique sound and everything. You would think that getting too much Tool might get a bit redundant, but it's not. And they're so scarce with it. And whenever they release it, it's almost. I was talking about this with my brother. I was like, it almost seems like each album there's an album missing in between to connect them. Like they're not too far apart, but it's almost like there should have been something in between Undertow and Ænima. There should have been something between Ænima and Lateralis. There should have been something.
Could be, but that might erase.
No, I'm not. There should have been, but the amount that their music changes.
Yeah.
It's almost like there's something missing in between. Not that there should be anything.
But you can't see.
But the thing is, if they were doing that, it'd probably like water down their sound. Whereas the fact that it is scarce and that they let each album breathe and give time between the release of albums, it gives them more time to evolve and change and give you something different. So like even Fear Inoculum, like it was different than what 10,000 Days was, but it'd been so long and it has all the same elements. They're still the same band, but it's different. They don't have a song like The Pod on there anymore, but I don't know. It's just sort of ever expanding.
Yeah.
Yeah, they kind of strike me as like the Stanley Kubrick of music, where it's like it's so many years in between projects, but when they're making making a movie or a record, it's like they're always making like this super complex, very difficult. Like they're always making 2001: A Space Odyssey, where it takes years, but then when you see the result, you're like, okay, yeah, I see why you took all the time to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we want artists to do that. I mean, it takes a lot more out of the artist to put that time and effort in, and not putting out hits and stuff. So, but we want that, or you will get nothing but bubblegum pop.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like listening to Fear Inoculum, it's not like my problem is almost like I don't have the time, or I'm not willing to give up the time to get into it. Because when you do listen to it, it is like a Kubrick movie where it might be 3 hours, but that scene is cool. I like that line. That's a cool lighting in that scene. That's cool. You can do the same thing in a Tool album. Oh, I like that lyric. That's a cool guitar riff. That's a really cool drum fill. That bass riff is really cool, but it might not be for a whole song. It might be for a part. It might be for a minute. It might be for 10 minutes. But it's just giving you so much, and it's so dense that it does take a while to fully absorb it all and fully appreciate it in the ways that I appreciate the songs from Ænima, the songs from Lateralis. I can't, it's going to take me a while to absorb the Fear Inoculum, and just with the way life is now, I have less time to dedicate to do that, which is the sad part of getting older.
Yeah, but it's like, that's high information music. It's going to take more time. It's just like classical music. You put on a classical piece, you're not like, that's a good beat. You got to be like, okay, what's going to happen? What's happening here? You're along for a ride. So.
Yeah, and I think I've seen some Maynard interviews, and he's like the first to admit that he's like, we're difficult with each other to work with. Like we have meetings, and then like just like for them to come to the decision to like release their catalog for streaming took years, and it was like, why? You know what the end result's going to be like the first time you have the conversation, but like guys get stuck in their ways. But at the same time, that's what makes the band so good, because you have those guys that are like, this is what I've done my entire career, and look where it's got me. I'm not going to back off on this. And like that's where you see those infightings, or that kind of dialogue, I guess.
Because I forget his exact quote, but he was saying like people would jump on him on like Twitter or whatever online, just being like, fuck, like just put your shit on Spotify. And he's like, fuck, I want it on Spotify too. Like, don't yell at me. I'm not the problem. I'm not the one holding it up.
Right.
But like, it's just
talk to Danny.
It's just interesting to see that like even in this band, like there's only 4 of them, and if it's still a democracy, so if 2 want it on, 2 want it off, or 3 want it on, 1 wants it off, like how are you going to juggle that? And they are a band that's all about, their artistic integrity. Like they're obviously doing what they want, when they want, presenting themselves how they want. So for
that's
them,
what makes them great, though.
Yeah, but that's what makes them great. Like their decision to go on to Spotify, like, yeah, it might be a no-brainer for most people. Like, yeah, why not? You're going to get all the streams. But for a band who's not in it for the money, they're not in it to try to gain notoriety or clout or any sort of fame. They have their fans. They sell out stadiums. They're selling albums like crazy. Do we need to put it on Spotify?
Yeah.
It just kind of adds to their mystery that it's not there.
And the good thing is like I've seen quotes from Maynard where he's like all maybe as rocky as they seem in between records, they're always going to get back together. He's like, even in the Joe Rogan interview, he's like, those are my brothers. He's like, I'm not going to get into like those conversations here, but those are my brothers. I always stand with them. And he's also said we're going to make music until we're dead. So like I wouldn't be surprised if like 10 years from now we see another, or 5 years or 3 years, who knows, we see more Tool stuff.
Yeah, it's hard to keep a band together where each one of the members is obviously like hugely influential in what happens, but it's that balance between them. It's not like it's like Maynard writing the songs and dishing them out. It's not that kind of a band. Like the guitar is really important, the drums are obviously really important. Obviously, Maynard's integral. The bass is pretty important a lot of the time. So, like, but
they're not a band.
One guy couldn't do that. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, they're not a band that can go into a studio for 3 months and bang out an album. They're going to need a year. They're going to need a while. They're going to have to sit with these songs and work on them. Like they're not. Yeah. Their music is not like, bang out. I don't want them to bang out a song in a day. I wouldn't want that from Tool. It'd be interesting to hear what they came up with, but
you do want it.
But I think also for them, they're at the point too where they're pretty much like rock gods at this point. Like their legacy is stamped. They don't want to ruin that legacy. Their discography is short enough as it is. They're not going to, at this point in their careers, they're not going to start spitting out albums every year or every 2 years. Just release it at your own pace. Like you took 13 years. It's not like I was starved for Tool content. There's so much back catalog. There's so much to appreciate in their old music, because you take something away from it every time you listen to it. So So it's So for them, take 10 years. Just give me something good.
Right on.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Did you guys have any final thoughts before we ask the question? I'll just jump in real quick. Maynard's like a winemaker. Have you guys ever tried his wine or considered ordering some of his wine?
No.
No. It's like 60 bottles. I looked up some pricing and stuff. It's like $60 a bottle, like for like a bottle of red. I was like, maybe do I get a 4-pack of like some mead or something like that? But I don't know. He makes it sound so interesting on Joe Rogan that's like, I should.
If I ever go to Arizona, I'll go check it out.
Yeah, I think that's when I'll do it. If I ever go to Arizona.
Yeah.
So I guess, we could ask the final question. Is this album essential, or you can answer that however you want. Who wants to go first? You want me to go first? I got probably the weakest opinion. I don't know.
I'll go.
Go for it.
Yeah, this one's essential. I think this is like I mentioned earlier. This is the album where they hit this balance between the crazy long prog stuff and like the sing-along songs. They're still like rock songs. So I think that's really, no album defines Tool, because like Ænima was saying, there's like a missing link between each album. Each album's unique enough, kind of stands alone. So it's not like it's a representative of the band, but I think this is where they hit the highest density of songs on one album. So I'm going to say this is the Tool album.
Cool.
Yeah, I'll jump off on that and say it's essential. I think also it was a perfect timing for them, because coming out of the early 90s grunge and alternative wave, we kind of wanted something more and something different, and they came in and they sort of have a bit more of a metal sound, but it was proggy and different, and especially a song like Stinkfist played well for that crowd, especially with stuff like Rage Against the Machine being around and more hardcore stuff like that. And it also primed us for nu metal, which is great. Sort of a weird legacy. Not that it's their legacy, or not that they're nu metal or anything, but I just remember all those nu metal bands, every interview, they'd be like, Tool Rage. They're all sort of Tool and Rage fans, which is fair enough. Like, it inspired them, which is fine. Art always inspires other art. But I don't know, they were my introduction to prog. Not that I got really into prog rock later on, but I was more open to it. I listened to bands like Mogwai, Sigur Rós, and not as the more metal stuff, even though I do like bands like King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, and
Mars Volta.
Mars Volta, Mastodon. There was some other stuff I got into, but it just seemed like Tool was like at the ground floor of the next wave of metal. They were sort of like the bridging gap between the 80s kind of more hardcore stuff that was happening and then the later new metal, more sort of proggy metal that kind of happened afterwards. So I think Ænima is sort of the beginning of that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an important album culturally, and just for me personally, it was my introduction to the heavy. So, and it just kind of taught me a lot about patience and song structures and a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I will say I definitely listened to music differently after getting to know Tool.
Yeah.
Like I now will listen to something and I know that sometimes it takes time to actually like it. And if you expect to only like stuff right away, well then you're gonna end up listening to the same stuff all the time because you never.
Though I did like Spring Fizz right away.
Yeah. This is true. And that's the great thing about it.
How about you, Gordon? What would you say as the outsider?
As the outsider, I'm glad I did this week. I will say they are essential. Like this album and I guess Lateralis as well, but I like this album a lot. And yeah, I gotta say Tool is essential. I'm glad I did this week because I feel like I kind of got like a weird history lesson, kind of going back to what you were saying, where like you could see the total influence on like bands like Korn, System of a Down, like that new metal sound. But it's like it fills in the blanks where it's like, okay, I see who influenced them. I also like that Tool is they work at the beat of their own drum. They do their own thing. They work at their own pace, and they're not under any pressure or obligation. So they're pretty much a wild card. Like you can go down the rabbit hole and check out all the conspiracy theories and focus on the non-music stuff and have fun with that and all their crazy like misinformation as well. I think that's really exciting. I think the best bands usually are able to mix those two things, like the misinformation and just being just mysterious, I guess. Like you take Radiohead, you're like, who knows what Radiohead's going to do next, or how they're going to release their next album, or how they're going to connect with audiences. But with Tool, it's like they've been doing that since like day one. So I really respect that, and I like that they bring that to music. And I'm glad I figured out or got to see who Maynard was. Like he was always a mystery to me, but this week I seeing the interviews and hearing him talk a lot more, especially with those Joe Rogan podcasts. I have a totally different appreciation for him now. So yeah, I say they're essential.
But wait a minute, hold on. You say like both of those albums are essential? Both of
them? If I have to be choosy, I'll say I'm more likely to come back to Ænima. I do like a lot of the songs on Lateralis, but thinking of my history in the past, I only listened to it once this week to get through it, and listening to it in the past, I've probably only listened to that album maybe 2 or 3 times altogether. Although it's one of those things where it's like, if I do want to listen to more Tool, like it's probably going to reward re-listening it and revisiting those albums. So it's hard to say like it's not essential. I don't like it, but at the same time, it's like I think Ænima is the one that is the essential. If I had to pick one Tool album to take with me.
Yeah, like almost like it's better to digest coming from like regular radio music. It's better to digest Ænima first. If you start right away with Lateralis, you might like just be soured by
you get tripped up a little bit.
Yeah. Cool. Well, yeah, I guess another 3 for 3.
Yeah. So check out Tool and Ænima.
Yeah, I just didn't want to give out like the cop-out answer that I gave last week, where I was like, yeah, Pearl Jam's like, you got to respect them, but like, I don't really listen to them. But with this, I think it was a different weekend. I think I'll probably end up listening to more Tool going forward than I will like Pearl Jam.
I think the difference there would be Tool is just so much more unique and so much more of a rarity in the music world.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It's kind of something different that it's going to bring. If you've never heard Tool before, it's going to bring you something new. Whereas if you haven't heard Pearl Jam before, you've probably heard many bands that are similar, and that makes sort of alternative rock music.
Mm-hmm.
Oddly enough, Wish List, that song was popping in my head from listening to Pearl Jam last week. It's like the one song I was like, these lyrics still make sense. But yeah.
For me, what's that one song that's after, a weird tangent, but what was that one drumming on that Yield album where it's like, it's just the drummer? Yeah, the Red Dot. That song was in my head for like the whole weekend after. I don't even know why, but
weirdest track.
Cool.
Well, we wrap it up?
Yeah, I guess we'll wrap it up. Thanks for joining us this week on the Essential Albums podcast. Join us next week when we talk about what are we talking about again?
My Bloody Valentine's Loveless.
There you go.
Went from looking into our heads to looking to our shoes.
Yep.
Yeah, dive into the shoegaze, another influential sound for sure. So yeah, thanks for joining us. Hopefully same time next week. Like and subscribe.
Comment. And also, I haven't checked with these guys. I hope it's okay. Shout out to my friend's podcast, Ethan on Action. If you like action movies, check it out. And Ryan's YouTube channel if you want some music or drum lessons.
I do stuff on YouTube.
Yeah.
Original music by Ryan Dugal and artwork by Vincent Train. Thanks for joining us, guys. See you later.